she said, she's like, I didn't know that the abuse went on for that long. And then I remember sort of sitting back. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, when I caught it happening, she goes, I just thought that was the only time it happened. And I was just, thankful that I was there to intervene.
Stop it.
And I was thinking about it. I was like, that's fascinating. I was like, because I remember many different, like, sort of snippets of, his hand down my pants and him breathing in my ear and stuff like that and telling me to be quiet. And I remember so many different things, but I don't remember that scene with my stepmom. So I'm like, well, it definitely has happened multiple times. And it's not like I went round there every week. So I'm like, interesting why I didn't tell you guys at that moment that it's happened for so long. But then I didn't see a problem with it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. You are listening to Don't Be Afraid to Talk podcast with James. I believe if we are going to affect change, we must go back to the basic, which for me, in essence, is conversations. Talking and listening is key for growth, and I hope our stories will bring us together and we can draw inspiration from each other. Conversation will include topics such as mental and physical health, trauma and its effect, suicidal thoughts, recovery, and well-being. We will continue to raise awareness and offer a different perspective, a mindset or an idea that could inspire you to take charge of your well-being and to grow as a human being.
Thank you for joining us today. Today I'm joined by Perry, who's from the UK. Perry is an actor, writer, an activist and a coach. And today we're going to be talking about breaking the silence, which is his own personal story about sexual abuse. If you are listening today, have an open mind, and we hope you can learn something from today's episode. Perry, how are you?
I'm good, James. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good now.
Yeah.
The nerves are gone. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So I am someone who spends a lot of my time now. If you see me online, it's doing content, it's speaking on stage, it's writing books, it's in the middle of doing a documentary all around raising awareness on intrafamilial abuse. And for those people who don't know, intrafamilial abuse is basically sexual abuse that happens within the family environment. And the reason why I'm on this path is because I went through sexual abuse myself when I was 10. It lasted for about 1.5 years. And then when it stopped, my dad told me to keep quiet on the story. And I lived in silence for 12 years. And for anybody who's listening to this, you know what, and you live in silence on something, whether it's about abuse, whether it's about, I said this at my last talk, that everybody can relate to silence. Whether it's about abuse on one end of the scale, or if we go to the other end of the scale, could be a promise that you made to yourself that you didn't end up keeping, right? But you keep that to yourself. You don't want people to know, so you don't want people to think that you're a failure at whether you didn't go to the gym or whether you didn't start the book or whether you didn't start the business, whatever it is. So we can all relate to living in silence. And depending on the weight of it, it can send you down a very, very dark path. So my aim is to help as many people as possible to break that silence so they don't go down that path, or at least get off it if they're on it.
Totally, yeah. Some of that's what we're going to be talking about. And yeah, a lot of it, most of it's the fear, the perception we have, but yeah. Before we get going, we're going to play a quick game called 1 for 1. I'll give you a word, and you say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 random words. So the first one is eating.
Healthy.
Tornado.
Mess.
Amsterdam.
Strippers.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. And walking.
Nature.
And the last one is TED.
Speaking.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. And how was your trip to Amsterdam anyway?
I went to Amsterdam when I was at university. I think I was 19 or 20. And I went to Amsterdam. It was me and 5 other guys from uni, all single. Went to Amsterdam. One thing on our brain at that time.
Yeah.
You know, so it'd be very different if I went back there, because now if I go back there, I would, because I know how beautiful Amsterdam is in regards to architecture. Lots of things that they have there, but I didn't see any of that, mainly because I was high off of brownies all the time. So it'd be definitely a different experience, but hey, I was 20, so.
Yeah, you had a different mindset than the one you have now anyway. So
exactly.
Yeah. Super. Yes, I just like to start with a podcast and relate to talk about childhood. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself growing up?
Yeah, sure. So ever since I was a child, I've wanted to be an actor. I've been a visionary ever since I was a child. The first sort of connection to vision is when I was a child. I don't remember how old I was, but I was very, very young. And I remember looking at a TV, but at the time I didn't know what a TV was. I just remember seeing like a picture, and I'm just watching it. And I remember there's 2 people on the screen, and I remember just being like to myself, I want to be on that. Right. And that's all I remember. And ever since then, that vision has then grown and grown and grown into what it is now and what it's going to be. So, yeah, started as a child, went to school, studied performing arts, studied acting, and drama. Yeah. Big drama guy. I wasn't the musical theatre type of guy, which 90% of people inside the drama classes were. I always felt like an outcast when I was in drama class, and I never knew why. I know why now. It's because I call myself an actor, but when I look at other people who call themselves actors, not all, but a lot of other people who call themselves actors, I'm like, I don't feel the same as them, because I won't do any advert that my agent brings me. I won't do a movie that I don't feel connected with. Even if I have £0 on my account and they offer me 50 million, if I don't resonate with it, I'm not doing it. And it's why which is now manifested into the person that I am now, with the vision that I have for that world. And that is to tell true stories. Right? So feature films where each one is a true story, but a powerful story, not necessarily about somebody who's famous. They could have no fame at all. They could be somebody in my network who lives down the street, but they have a story that I know that the world needs to hear and that the world needs to see. And visual storytelling is the most powerful thing. So that's how I feel like when you grow up with dreams and goals and ambitions, if you can hold on to them long enough, you'll see yourself mature in that world and mature in the way that you see it, as long as you still hold on to it. So that's been a very, very interesting journey and experience.
Yeah, but the temptation is always there to try like that, to just do anything to get into that field. But if you hold on to what you think is right for you, it might take longer to get there. But the reward from it.
Yeah, and exactly. And I feel like what's helped is I've always had a very huge amount of self-confidence, which some people would relate to something else, whether it comes, sometimes it can come across as, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cocky.
That's what I was looking for. Cocky. And I'm like, and I never know how to answer that. Cause like when it comes to acting, I know that I'm going to have Hollywood movies. Like it's going to happen. My aim in life is to do it bigger and better than The Rock. That's it. Right. In regards to that side of it. And it will happen. Like I'm unavailable for any other option. Okay. So when it comes to like not having an agent anymore and deciding to take a longer path, I'm like, well, that's okay, because it's going to happen anyway. And I'd rather it happen at the pace that it needs to, in alignment with what makes me happy and what's on purpose. So that is, okay, well, what I'm going to do is, instead of doing adverts and short films I don't really feel connected to, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to spend the next 5 years working on a feature film, writing the script, getting a producer, and do that as best that we can, because I know for a fact that that's going to take me where I need to go. You know, and I think it's just having that confidence that the vision that I've had ever since I was a kid will actually come to fruition. But that you can take to any area of life, you know, to having a very successful and famous podcast, to having a massive career. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yours just happened to be acting. Yeah.
Yeah, for that, for sure. And I guess the same thing, it spills into the vision that I have for survivors of abuse, and seeing people that have gone through family abuse to speak out, so much so that it becomes a conversation that people don't shy away from anymore. And I see people from all over the world breaking their silence, and I see the suicide rate decreasing. I see generational trauma starting to be healed and the chain to be broken. And I see that being a global wave of impact. And I see that happening too. I was like, well, there's no other, it's not going to happen. The only reason it's not going to happen is people don't do anything about it.
Definitely. Yeah. It's nice to have like big visions like that and just let it come naturally instead of forcing it, because obviously when you force it, you would run out of energy eventually. Yeah, then it becomes, then you don't enjoy it anymore. You lose that drive. Exactly.
Yeah. And I saw once online, somebody said you don't get things from a place of, if you want something really badly, and I think this is true in lots of areas, it's not true in some, but I do think it's powerful nonetheless, that if you desperately want something, then you're telling the universe that you lack it. And you can never get things from a place of lack, because with lack comes resistance. Right? So rather be okay with, I want that goal, but I don't desperately need it. And the universe will reward you in bringing that towards your way. You know, and that come across, for example, going into an audition room and the casting directors can just smell the desperation on you. Yeah. Because you need it. They ain't going to hire you. You don't care how bad you need it. Right? Yeah. So that's how that would translate into that as an example. Totally.
And growing up, how's the relationship with your father?
My father, so my biological mother walked out when I was 4/5, and me and my dad, it was just me and him. I used to see my mum like maybe once or twice a year. And my dad, he parented me in a way, like he was a magnificent man. You know, I learned so many things from him, good and bad. But we were very close. We were best friends our whole lives, but we butted heads a lot because we were very similar. And we were very not similar at the same time. It's very strange, but I know a lot of people can relate to that. And he parented me in a way where, one, he instilled fear into his kids, me and my brother. Like, we'd fear our dad in regards to, don't cross him. Like, just don't. You know, he never, like, hit us. He used to smack me when I was a kid. He never smacked my brother. Like, he stopped doing that. But my dad was an angry man, and it would be like a kettle. And it would be rather than fists, like I said, he never hit, but he would shout. Right? And I remember times where, like, I'll get in trouble at school, and I know that they've called home, and I don't want to go home. And I would stand outside my door, and it would take me half an hour just to put a key into the door to open up that door. Right? That's what I was like for my dad. And, you know, but my dad, so he instilled fear as a parenting type of thing. And he parented me in a way that he wished his parents parented him. So my dad's mother and his stepdad, so my step-granddad, they were alcoholics, and they would always be in the pub every single day, drunk, come home. And when they come home, they wanted dinner cooked on the table. And that would be my dad. My dad would be the chef. My dad would clean the house. And that was him. But if my dad left to go to a friend's, or he went away for the weekend, his mum and stepdad doesn't care where he is. So my dad grew up experiencing a lack of love from his parents and a lack of security. So he went all in on that to me, in a way of not love as in like hugs and kisses, because my dad was a Cockney guy. He was a man's man. He wasn't like that.
We're not doing hugs here.
Yeah, definitely not. But he would if I go to a friend's house, he wanted my friend's address. He wanted his number. He wanted the parents' number. And he would give me a curfew. And if I was 5 minutes late, I'm grounded for 2 weeks, and I don't have anything. I've only got pen and paper for 2 weeks, right? And so that was kind of our relationship growing up as a child. And then when it came to the sexual abuse, so how that stopped is because my stepmom caught it happening in the living room. So I was sitting on my step-granddad's lap. There's a blanket over us, and he had his hand down my pants, and he was basically fondling me whilst he was watching TV. And my stepmom caught it. She took me out, took me home, told my dad, and my dad confronted me, and he asked me, what was going on, and I told him, and he said, right, you're not going to go around there again. You're not going to go and tell your mother, my biological mum. You're not going to go and tell your friends at school. You're going to keep this here at home. And it was my dad that told me to keep quiet on that story. And yeah, that's just that's what started that silence. But to begin with, I didn't know like the sexual abuse. I didn't know it was wrong. I didn't know what my granddad, I just thought it was a form of love he was giving to me that nobody else was. And
with your granddad, this started to happen about 10, but prior to that, you had a good relationship with him as well.
Yeah, it's funny is I have so many pockets of memory loss, so many. Like, for example, the relationship with my step-granddad before the abuse, I don't really remember it. I don't remember all of the abuse. So that time there, that my stepmom caught happening, I don't remember any of that. I don't remember that happening. I don't remember really. I remember like a very, very fuzzy picture of my dad talking to me about what happened at my nan's house, but I don't remember his questions. I don't remember what I said to him. That all there is out of my stepmom's mouth. She told me about what happened. She told me about what she caught. I don't remember any of that. And then throughout school, I had a school counselor, and we would meet roughly like once every couple of weeks, and it was like once a month, then it was like once every 6 months. I don't remember any of those sessions. I remember meeting her twice. One of them was because she had an MP3 player.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, she had when they just came out, and I was like, whoa. And then the other time was because she took me to her office, her counselling office in West London in Chiswick, in school hours. So I felt like a rebel because I was, taking time out of school. That's only, I don't remember anything else. So like, but that's, they say it's trauma, and that's what trauma does to the body is it causes memory loss like that. Could it be something else too? Maybe. Could it just be how my brain is? Maybe. I don't know. But all I do know is that there's a lot of things I don't remember.
Yeah. The trauma from that can do that to the brain.
For sure.
And it's the way of keeping you safe because that's what the brain is meant to do.
Yeah.
But with that comes the challenge of trying to remember pieces. And I don't remember, like, when the abuse started, obviously as a 10-year-old, you don't know, you just think this is okay. And you wouldn't have the knowledge of like, oh, what are you doing? And especially if it's a relative as well. Because often when it comes to, when you're raising kids, the perception is the danger is outside. It's not in the family. So when it's happening in a family, it's even difficult to, well, for a 10-year-old, they're not going to know it's abuse to begin with. And for yourself, once the abuse started, you kind of start feeling afraid being around him, but not knowing why you're afraid being around him.
I think, again, this is all like just funny in a weird way. It's like I remember being more happy around him than I do upset because of, he would take me to the pub and he would let me drink his Guinness and his ales when the barman wasn't looking. He played that character, i.e. grooming. He played that person. So therefore he was like a little Father Christmas to me. But however, the one thing that sticks out, which I've always, interesting type of thing I have as a reaction to it, is that I remember, and this memory only unlocked like 3 years ago. And it was, I was never ever, I say allowed to, it's not like I asked and they said no, but it just never happened. I never stayed around there. I never slept overnight at my nan's house. Until this one time where my dad and my stepmom and my auntie and her boyfriend at the time, they went out on like a double date type of thing. And I stayed there. I stayed at my nan's house. And I remember initially crying on the sofa when they were leaving. And I was saying to my auntie, I don't want to stay here. I remember that.
Mm.
And then at night, I'm lying, I'm in the spare bed, in their spare bedroom. And my nan and my step-granddad was standing there. The door was open. They were in the doorway. My step-granddad had his arm over my nan. And they both said, oh, good night, Perry. And I was like, good night. Love you too. And then they walked out of the room. And I remember lying there facing the doorway. And I remember being scared, like shitless. I was like, and I just remember being scared. That was it. And I couldn't get to sleep for ages. But looking back, the only thing I can sort of rationalize that feeling is because there was never like rape or anything like that. It was more like fondling between me and my granddad. He did that during the day, and I was like, what's going to happen at night? What's he going to do if he was to come in here? I never knew what rape was. I didn't know what sexual abuse was, but it's more of this like, sort of like innate feeling of what's going to happen if he comes in. He didn't. But that's like the only like scared, really negative feelings that I can remember from that time.
And when you mentioned when your father found out what happened and he told you, not to say this to anyone, that obviously stayed with. This is one of the reasons why he stayed quiet for so long, and you were still a child at that time anyway. So yeah.
It's when he told me to stay quiet on it. I didn't understand. Like it was almost as if like my dad became not the villain of the story, but like he when he said it, I was a bit sort of on edge towards my dad. I said, like, why are you having this reaction? What do you mean I can't go around there anymore? What do you mean stay quiet? Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean is wrong? What my step-grandmother was doing to me? And it was a lot of that. And then the first couple of years, I didn't, as far as I remember, it wasn't really affecting me on this big level. However, in English class, maybe a year or so later, we had a substitute teacher, and the substitute teacher gave us a task, which usually sometimes, well, at least they did back then, they just give us an assignment so they can sit there and do whatever they want at their desk whilst we just do our random work. And that assignment was write a short story, and at the end of the class, hand it in. And I wrote a story about a family member being abused by a boy being abused by a family member, and I handed that in. And social services got involved, and that's how I got that school counsellor. Now, I don't remember writing that story. I don't remember handing it in. Don't remember any of that, right? But I got the proof. I got the letters that show it and everything. So it's like, it's in a way it didn't impact me. In a way it did, until it very much did when I got older and sex started to become a thing, because now I'm this horny teenager, right? Who basically watched American Pie a lot and wanted to be Stifler. But he didn't have the friends. He didn't have the confidence for the girls. And then that's when, because that started to become apparent, so did the sexual abuse. And so did the internal conflict over what happened. And then the memories of like, after it all happened, and then go round to my mother's house, and she just had a call from my dad, I told her, I can't remember how it happened, but I do remember sleeping on like a blow-up bed in her bedroom, and I remember lying in the bed, and she was kneeling down to me like as a sort of scared mother, and then she was all like saying about how wrong it was what he'd done to me, and I remember saying to her, "But Mum," and I was defending my step-granddad, right? But I was like, "But Mum, I enjoyed it." And I remember saying that to her. And I remember that crystal clear. And so then when that memory came to my mind, and then what's the answer to that? Massive shame, right? Massive shame. And then because of those things, that's what really, really enforced that silence. And like, people can't know about this. People can't know about this. They can't. And yeah, that's what really caused internal and external conflicts in my life at the late sort of, 15, 16-year-old sort of age.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned as well, when you, in school, you started becoming this other person because you had this much shame in you. you just wanted to portray the image of a confident, happy person, even though you had that much shame. You just, obviously, it was easier for you to be that person. As an actor as well, it's probably easier.
Exactly. Yeah. Good old method acting, being this new character. Yeah. So when I left school, I went to college, Richmond College, studied performing arts. Halfway through that, my nan's house got sold. We moved to a place called Bracknell. And my parents said to me, listen, you can still go to Richmond College if you want to, but it's costing them like £350 a month in train tickets. And they said, but, you know, we would like it if you can go to Bracknell College, you know, to save us money. And it took me like maybe a couple of months. And I was like, actually, to be fair, I will do. So then I ended up going to Bracknell College. And I remember making this decision. I was like, right, nobody knows me here. No one. They can either get to know Perry, who's a virgin, doesn't want to be, who's not confident, doesn't want to be, he doesn't have many friends, doesn't want that too, right? Or they can get to know Perry Power, who has slept with like over 20 girls, right? He parties all the time. He's a top G gangster, right? He's like, doesn't care about anything. Loads of friends. He owns the college. And I was like, all right. And then I started college, and I remember I went into the class and everyone was like, oh, who's this new guy? And then there was a break and we were all socializing. I remember this one girl, and she's like, so Perry, then come on. And she was like very confident. She's like, come on, Perry, how many girls you slept with then? And I remember I was like, oh, don't know. And then they're like, come on, you must know. I'm like, at least, I don't know. I said, at least 20 odd, right? And they're all like, oh. And I remember in my head, I'm like, bro, what are you talking about?
Where are you taking us?
I was like, whoa. I was like, mate. And I won't lie. So with this confidence, with this character that I was playing, I did start to sleep around. It started to become true in a way. Okay, it's like fake it till you make it. That kind of aspect, and it felt great in the moment. It felt great. You know, I was having my internal insecure needs being met in the external world. And then I started dating someone, and she was like known as a girl who secured Perry because he kept on sleeping around with everyone, and she was the one who put him on lock. Then me and her started dating. We then went traveling around Australia. We then came back. We then we moved into a house, like renting, and then she was at work in the pub. And then there, I'd like become a personal trainer and stuff like that in order to sort of trying to finance acting. And then I remember watching the Ellen DeGeneres show. Well, it was like a clip, and it was Lewis Howes on there talking about Masculinity, his latest book. And she says to him, "Why have you written this book? What's the reason behind it?" And he goes, "Well, I was abused as a child, sexually abused, and I grew up as this man wearing masks because I was too afraid to confront that truth." And he articulated it in a way where all the lights clicked, you know, in my head. It all made sense. I was like, bro, you went to college. Yeah, you create a character, but dude, what you was actually doing, you was masking yourself. You didn't want people to know. You was too scared to confront the boy that was abused. So you created this completely alternative being, right, to make up for the flaws and the internal and lacks that you had. So, dude, you need to, I was a couple of years into personal development at that point where now that I'm aware of it, I need to do something about it. I can't just push it away anymore. You know, that was like, it just couldn't happen. So I was like, all right, how do I take off the mask?
Yeah, like that. Like when you make that decision, you still have the internal voices.
You do.
The shame that makes you feel like, I'm sure you probably felt that it was your fault. So
yeah, you know, for sure. I was like, well, you know, I still had those thoughts. I was like, the abuse went on for like a year, maybe a year and a half. Why did it have to go on for that long? You know, why? And why did you say to your mum that you enjoyed it? So yeah, or, you know, you could have stopped it. You could have said to your mum you didn't enjoy it. You didn't even have to say anything. Right? So all these things, yeah, you know, it really, really did affect me. But I was like, but I need to get this mask off. I have to. How can I start that? I was like, okay, when my ex-girlfriend at the time, when she comes home from work, I'm going to get Amara, my dog, and we're going to go for a dog walk, and I'm going to tell her. And I was shitting it, you know, right? And I was like, but I need to do it anyway. So we go out for a dog walk, and I remember walking. It took me ages to say it, and the longer that I was
holding it,
yeah, it's like it just became worse and worse and worse, and it felt like I was naked, and that's what vulnerability feels like. You know, feel naked in a crowd of people, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't remember the words that I said to her. I remember like vague memories, but I don't remember the whole conversation. I do remember saying to her, like, I started it off by saying the guy who you started dating in college was a fraud to a certain degree. Okay. At least the guy who you met first day in college, that was a complete fraud, complete fake. Everything about it was fake. And she's like, what are you talking about? And then I told her everything, and she was just, didn't have no words, shocked. And then I said to her about the abuse as a child, but I don't remember any of that bit, but I remember telling her, and it all made sense in her head, and she welcomes me, and she's like, okay, you know, and she hugged me and stuff like that, I think. But I was just so in here, so in my head, that I wasn't fully being present, because I was like, what on earth has just happened? You know, what have I just said? What have I just released? And that became the start of the process of breaking my silence.
And how did she take it? Because sharing something like that with your partner, it's difficult, because you have a lot of internal voices telling you, like, if you share this relationship is over, what are they going to think of you? They're going to walk away, and you must have had a lot of that happening before. So how was her reaction? Like, were you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to a degree about how, like, there was a fear to begin with that she was going to leave me, but I still decided to do it anyway. But I did definitely fear that, and there was definitely a part of me that was shocked that she didn't, and that she had such a great reception to what I said. Like, I remember having that feeling. Again, I don't remember the words that she said, but I do remember the feeling. But you know, you touch upon something which I speak a lot on now, and is that if I was to go back, like, if there's someone living in silence, I would never ever tell them to break their silence to someone for the first time. Like, if I was to go back, I would not have told Abby straight away. The reason why is because if Abby gave me a bad reaction, or she paused for too long, or she had a thought that I didn't agree with, then that would have sent me back living in silence, because now I associate my truth with rejection, and I would have felt a lack of love. So, you know, I always recommend to break the silence to yourself. Like, what I could have done then was confronted my own truth, and use, like, which I talk about in the book and on social media, is use all these different ways to break the silence to myself first, until I'm at a place where, you know what, I've confronted my truth, I've confronted my story so many times where I feel like now I own my story and I own that truth. Now I'm going to tell my partner, not from a place of, I need reassurance from you, right? I need acceptance, I need love from you, because you can't control their reaction, but from a place of, hey, I'm telling you to inform you. You know, and that is a big shift in power there. So I ended up telling her, and a couple of months later, I go to a business conference. Well, it is a mastermind event. Yeah. And when I'm at the mastermind event, there was me and 5 other fitness coaches and 3 sort of staff there, the mentors. And then they go around the circle. Hey guys, first day, introduce yourself. And I'm at the edge of the circle, so I was going last. And I don't remember anyone's introductions. I just remember staring at the floor and like, oh, Perry, short turn now. So, okay. I don't remember anything I said. I don't remember a single word that I said. Right. But I do remember that I spoke out, and I know what the topics that I spoke about. I spoke about my dad's death. I spoke about being abused as a child. I spoke about that I'm still messed up with it all. And I didn't look up, and I remember I stopped talking, and I was thinking in my head, I was like, what the fuck? What are you doing, bro? You don't know anyone here. Why? I didn't plan it. It just came out. And I remember the 2 coaches, James and George, I remember they just looked at each other and they said to me, right, we need to introduce you to someone. And in a break, the other fitness coaches, one of them came up to me and said, thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel like you brought everyone closer together. So I got accepted by them. And then the guy who they ended up introducing me to was this other fitness coach who had recently lost his dad. And he spoke about how he managed to get through that was to find forgiveness within the relationship that he had with his father, rather than guilt.
Yeah.
you know, and hate and blame and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm guessing, like you mentioned, when you're speaking to the group like that, it wasn't, you didn't go in there with a plan like, this is what I'm going to talk about. It's just something that happened at that split second.
Exactly.
You just started, and it's when at the end you realize, like, what just happened. Yeah.
I know. It's just a massive shock factor. Everyone was as shocked as I was. I was like,
I'm guessing if you went in with that mindset, you probably would have talked yourself out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like when I was driving home from the mastermind, it's like, if I'm sure you'd be able to relate to this, that if you are with someone who is where you want to be, and they are more successful than you in whatever you deem that to be, and from a place of inspiration, and you're hanging around them, and they've expanded your bubble, they've expanded it, right? Your thought process, your awareness, everything about it. And then when you leave their company, it's almost like, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it's like that bubble that they helped to increase is now started to shrink again, because you're going back to your world, you're going back to your comfort zone. Right. And that was what was happening to me driving home. I was like, I can't let this bubble shrink. I said, I need to break my silence again. I need to tell the whole world, but I don't want to tell every Tom, Dick and Harry. I want to say it once and everyone knows. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, okay, well, how can I achieve that? I said, well, Facebook, I guess I can just do a video and put it on there. I said, okay, all right, I'll do it when I get home. I'm driving. I'm like, voice. No, you won't. You won't do it when you get home. When you get home, that's ultimate comfort zone. You're going to walk in through the front door, because you still got about another 20, 30 minutes of the drive left. You're going to walk in through the front door, and you'll tell yourself, and you'll believe it, a story as to why you shouldn't do it. Okay? And then I was like, oh, it's true. And I saw a left approaching on the road, and I saw it approaching, and I indicated, pulled my car. I just forced myself into action, pulled my car up, took my phone out. I was like, I'm going to do it now. It took me 7 takes, did the video, put it onto Facebook, sitting there. What did I just do? What did I just do? Thinking about it. Then the voice started to get louder. Delete the video. Or at least have a look at the video. So that was first, then it was delete after. So it was look at the video. And then I remember I go on to the video, and this is random numbers, but it was something like this. It was like 67 views, and there was like 2 comments. I'm like, okay, so only 2 people out of those 67 have commented. So that means that like 65 people don't like this video, right? Or they hate this video or
Take
something.
It down.
Yeah. And then boom, I just feel myself heating up, and then I was going to delete it. But what I'd done is I just threw my phone into the back of the car. I literally just lobbed it into the back of the car. And then I turned my car on, and I just started driving. Like I just forced myself into action. And then when I get home, I put up, now that's like, 20 minutes later, roughly.
Yeah.
Get to my undo my seatbelt. I lean into the back to find my phone, and I have a look, not from a place of delete, because I had time to calm down, but from a place of, okay, what am I about to see now?
Yeah.
Okay.
What am I opening now? Yeah.
Exactly. And then I had a look, and the video just blew up, and it was just all positive comments, and people saying, oh, wow, thank you for sharing this. This happened to me too. And somebody DM'd me basically saying, thanks for sharing this. And I've been in a very, very dark place recently, and this has helped me see the light. And that for me was like, oh, okay, I see the power of this now. People need this story.
And was that your video talking about literally everything? Just not thinking, just speaking words that's coming out.
Exactly. It was like 17 minutes long or so, and it was just talking.
And at the time, this is how some of your relatives find out as well, I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
So video.
Correct. So I ended up going around to so this is after my dad had passed now. So I ended up going to my stepmom's house, and she was like, oh, we saw the video. My grandma was there as well. She's like, we saw the video. I was like, oh, okay. Thinking what she's going to say. And I thought she might say, oh, you didn't need to say that, Perry, come on, or something along those lines. But she didn't. She just said, she's like, I didn't know that the abuse went on for that long. And then I remember sort of sitting back. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, when I caught it happening, she goes, I just thought that was the only time it happened. And I was just, thankful that I was there to intervene.
Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it. I was like, that's fascinating. I was like, because I remember many different, like, sort of snippets of, you know, his hand down my pants and him breathing in my ear and stuff like that and telling me to shh, be quiet. And I remember so many different things, but I don't remember that scene with my stepmom. So I'm like, well, it definitely has happened multiple times. And it's not like I went around every week. So I'm like, interesting why I didn't tell you guys at that moment that it's happened for so long. But then I didn't see a problem with it at the time. You know? So why do I need to make them aware that it's happened for so... Exactly. So I was like, okay, interesting. Then I go around to my auntie's house, who had... My auntie's kind of like a third mum to me. And I go around there, you got my auntie and you got my cousin Kelly, who's my older cousin, 5 or so years older than me. She lives there. And I go around there, and then they were both sitting in the living room, and then said the same thing. We saw your video. This is my auntie. And I saw your video. I said, okay, cool. And she goes, you know, you weren't the only one who was abused by him. I said, I know. Kelly was too. Because Kelly had told me growing up about a couple of things that happened, but she didn't tell me too much in like too great detail. I said, yeah, Kelly too. She goes, it wasn't just you two. And she's like, it was someone else in the family. She goes, and it was your dad. I was like, oh. And I sat back and I was like, shit. I was like, and then all the dots connected. My dad becoming an alcoholic. My dad telling me to be quiet about the story. My dad shutting me down whenever I bring up the conversation. So many things. It just all made sense. You know, my dad lived and died in silence, and he used alcohol as a way, as a coping mechanism to silence the inner demons that was inside of his mind. And that's really, really where it became evident. Right, Perry, you got a purpose now. You got to do something about this, because people can't go down the same path as your dad. You know, you lived in silence for 12 years. You're lucky, because some people will never break that silence, and it sends them to an early grave. My dad was 48 when he had a heart attack. You know, so it's like shit needs to change, and that was a moment.
And when you heard it happen to your dad, obviously knowing what you knew at that time in terms of personal development, I'm guessing from that moment you just kind of looked at him. I know he'd passed, but you kind of looked at his life completely different. Yeah, that everything he was going through was trying to escape the pain.
Exactly. It gave it meaning. You know, and it gave it meaning. It was almost as if like his life formed into a message. You know, and it like he didn't die in vain. Like his story needs to be lived on and needs to be shared as many times as possible. Because it's almost as if like, you know, we don't need to find meaning in things, but I feel like if we do find meaning in things, sometimes it can help. You know, so if I find a meaning in my dad's existence, obviously to parent me and to be a fantastic human being, but I can also extract a message out of it that can help a lot of people with, hey, are you in your 40s? Are you in your 50s? Are you a man's man? Are you a cockney man, right? Are you a geezer? Are you somebody who doesn't want to show you emotion? Well, my dad was the same. Look where it ended him. You know, for example. So,
yeah. One of the things you mentioned as well about is the documentary that he was asking you to watch.
Yeah, the film Spotlight.
Spotlight, yeah, I have to watch that. And yeah, tell us that story.
Yeah, so very quickly, for those people who have never heard of Spotlight or anything of that nature, and maybe they've heard of it but don't know what it's about. It's about, in 2001, a team of journalists in Boston, in America, get assigned, essentially, in short, they get assigned this case of this priest molesting a child within the Catholic Church, but it gets covered up. And then they're like, well, why has it been covered up? Then they investigate it. Then they find out, hey, it's not just that one case. It's Catholic priests. So many Catholic priests in the one church. And like, oh, wow. Okay, it's churches all over the US. Oh, wow. It's churches all over the world within the Catholic Church system that are abusing priests. And bishops and everyone else are covering it up. Okay. And that's what that's about. And my dad said to me originally, came out, I think in 2015, and he tells me to watch it because we're big movie buffs. And so I'll watch it. And then we're driving home. He takes me back to his house, and then we put up outside the house. And he says to me, have you watched it yet? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you know, at the end of the film, just before the credits, there's a series of it told you basically all the locations around the states where there's been reported cases. I said, yeah. He goes, well, after that, there's places around the world where there's been reported cases, like cities around the world. And he goes, well, Cork in Ireland, which is where your step-granddad grew up, is listed at the end of the movie. And he just said that. And I was thinking, and in my head, I was like, what? Okay, well, what does that mean? I didn't say anything out loud. That was what in my head. But then when I was like, what does that mean? Then I was like, oh. And then I sort of sat back and I was like, I see. I said, well, that makes sense then. And that's what I said. And my dad lost his shit when I said that. So that makes sense then. He looked at me, he started shouting, goes, that doesn't make sense. You know, doesn't excuse him for anything. Gets out of the car, slams the car door shut. And I'm thinking, why are you getting so angry? I'm the one who got abused, not you. Right? You know what I mean? You know, if that's my reaction, that's my reaction. You don't need to have that reaction yourself. But now knowing what I know, what was that actually? That was me saying to Dad, oh, Dad, you know what? That makes sense why he abused you, Dad. It makes sense. You know, it is a reaction for his own story.
That's why he was interpreting what you're saying.
Exactly.
And then, yeah. And one of the other things you talk about again is forgiveness. And obviously when someone has gone through any sort of abuse, forgiveness it's a process. And it's something that you can only do when you're ready to do it. So for you, when you go to forgiveness, how do you get to the stage where you're like, okay, I have to forgive what happened to me? Not what happened to you, but forgive the person.
It's an interesting process, yes, journey, because it's like, for me, you know, it's interesting. I was on, it wasn't a podcast, it was just a call with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me, they're like, oh, talk to me like about your healing journey. And I pause, and I get asked this a lot, and I always pause because I don't know how to answer it. And I watched this clip last night where it was a reel, and I can't remember the question asked, but it was along the lines of this, where somebody said to Elon Musk, when you're like uninspired or when you're down, how do you sort of re-spark yourself? How do you remotivate yourself? And he sort of sat back and he paused, and he's like, I don't know how to answer that because I can't relate to that. He goes, I don't re-spark myself, I just do. You know, I just do the work. And I was thinking, I was like, okay, he's just giving me permission right there. And it's like, I can't necessarily relate to the healing journey because looking back, I've never been on a journey of healing. For me, I've been on a journey of vision board, taking action. Like, for example, I get so many survivors, and I'll come on to the forgiveness in a second. So I get so many survivors that say to me, oh, like, you've achieved so much. And they're talking about the book, talking about magazine articles, speaking on stage. They're like, how do you do that? And again, I've always paused with my answer to that. So I don't know how to articulate it. But now it makes sense to me that, for me, it's like when you buy a red car, you see red cars everywhere. Right? For me, it's like if you focus on healing your wounds, and that's your focus, you're always going to have wounds to heal. But for me, I put my focus in taking action on vision. So, for example, writing a book, goalposts, right? Doing a documentary, getting a magazine article, speaking on this stage, impacting 100 people, all these different things. And once my vision is on that, along the journey, things will come up. Hey, Perry, you need to find forgiveness, right? Because there's an issue right here. Okay. I slightly divert my focus on that specific area. Once I feel like, okay, I've made some significant change here, then I shift my focus back to the path that I was on, and then I continue moving forward. As opposed to what a lot of people do, there is no signpost, there is no visions. There are only focuses on healing. And I feel like that allows it to manifest even to more. So like when I then diverted my vision to healing, to forgiveness, I was like, okay, what do I do here? Do I just say, I forgive? Done? No. I was like, okay. And then I remember being like, okay, well, what does forgiveness actually mean? Because so many people say, I can't forgive my abuser. You know, I can't forgive my dad raping me when I was 7. I can't forgive my granddad abusing me for 4 years. And it's very much abuser focused when they see forgiveness. And what I learned is that it's got nothing to do with the abuser. And it has everything to do with the abusee, with the victim, with the survivor. And forgiveness to me is basically an act of letting go. It's an act of being like for me, how I found forgiveness was leading with curiosity, was asking questions. If I never had found forgiveness, then that means I'm going to have some type of hate, some type of negative hold, some type of something that doesn't serve me towards my step-granddad. Chances are I never would have met up with any of his family members to find out that they were victims too. Because my step-granddad's daughters, sons would have just been like him. I'm not going to meet up with his family. They're all probably abusers, you know, type of thing. But I'm like, well, hold on a second. And let me meet up with them because they could be victims too. And they were. Right. And that's what forgiveness allowed me to do. Allow me to lead with the curiosity, to ask questions, and then find out that my step-granddad grew up in St. Joseph's Industrial Estate. He got raped and abused by the priests there. Does that excuse his actions? No, but that's not what it's about. Again, that is abuser focus. It's not excusing him. It's not giving him a get out of jail free card. It's just being curious to know what the story is, if there is one there. And then being like, okay, I understand, even if it's 1%, why you went down that path. I hope that you get some help. I hope that you don't inflict this onto other people if they're still alive. I really do. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I don't want you in my life. And I don't want you in my family's lives and my kids' lives. Okay. And I am going to respect that, but I have forgiven you. And there was a powerful story. I read this. I just finished a Spotlight book. So they've done a book after the movie. And I finished reading it last week, and I can't remember the names, but there was a very notorious priest called Geoghegan, Father Geoghegan, who just molested and raped hundreds and hundreds of boys. And there was a story about one of the boys who grew up, who became an adult, and he was a father, and he went into the church. He tracked down Geoghegan and went into the church, and he had a sit down with him. And he said, Geoghegan, do you remember what you done to me as a kid? And Geoghegan never denied anything. He's like, yeah, because he said that the kids wanted it. That's how that was his sort of view on it, that the kids wanted it. I helped them. And he goes, yeah, I remember what I'd done. And he said, well, and then he basically said to Geoghegan, it's like, listen, just before I let you know that this is how you impacted my life from the abuse. This is how what happened between us completely destroyed a lot of things. Okay, so he laid it out on the table to him, and he goes, but I just wanted to come here to say to you that I forgive you. And Geoghegan sort of stood out of his chair and said, excuse me? You right? And then he then relayed a certain verse of the Bible. I can't remember what it is, but it was along the lines of that you must forgive the sinner or whatever, something along
I think
those
I know
lines.
it,
Yeah. But he relayed that back to Father Geoghegan, and Father Geoghegan started crying. And he just said, thank you. And I'm like, what a tremendously powerful turn of events. And that's what forgiveness is about. Because that wasn't about Father Geoghegan. That was about the guy coming there, right, to put a full stop at the end of that story. And say, right, I'm done with this. I'm moving forward. I forgive you. Seek some bloody help. Sort it out. But I'm gone. And that, for me, is what forgiveness is about. And it's basically just a shift in power. And I believe that everybody should try to at least explore the option of forgiveness.
It's obviously, if you're the person who's been abused, once you're in your head, you just have this idea that I must hate this person. That if I forgive them, it means that what they did to me is okay. But forgiveness is not saying what they did was okay. It's what you're saying is you're kind of releasing yourself off that person. Say, look, this is what you did, and I'm okay with it, but I just leave me alone, type of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
It can be a long process for some. Yeah, totally.
It can be.
And tell us about your charity. You have two charities, so you have the We Rescue Kids and the Andy Project. Yeah,
so with We Rescue Kids, that came about actually the ball started rolling just before the book came out. And it's an American charity, and what we do is we give mental health care, so therapy essentially, to child survivors of sexual abuse. So they'll get referred to us, and then we match them up with a child therapist, and they start that process, whether it's 3, 6, 9, 12 months. whenever the therapist believes that the child or children has moved on to a much better place compared to when it started. So that's the the US charity. Now the UK, it's not a charity yet; it's an organization. It's basically it got denied charity. It got denied the charity status because essentially because I didn't give, in the UK's words, it gave me 10 or 11 pages of details, which is fantastic. They basically wanted every single letter of the alphabet, and I only gave them a few letters. Basically, they just needed a lot of detail. So they declined the charity. So we're basically working to get that back on the road again, using their advice to resubmit it. But that's the Andy Project. It's an organization that's awaiting charity approval, and that Andy being after my dad's name. And I visualize this as being something for male survivors of child sexual abuse, to help them with peer-to-peer support and with mental health support, to help them with the battles that my dad faced. So we got that. And then I'm a trustee on a charity as well called We Together. And what We Together is about, it's a brand new charity. And it's about a database for those people who have been through abuse to self-report their abuse. You know, there's a big thing at the moment that it's a ridiculous amount, like 1%, less than 1% of cases go to trial.
Yes.
You know? And they don't always lead to convictions. And what We Together is about is to increase that. So rather than for example, let's just say I open up the door to the postman and he barges in and he sexually abuses me. I then go to the police and I say what's happened, but there's no proof. The postman gets off free. What I can do is I can use this database, and with GDPR regulations involved, is I can self-report the abuse. I can say what's happened. I can say when it happened. And what that does then is other people, if they've had a similar thing, can go onto the database, self-report. And if there's similarities and stories within a 15-mile radius, for example, then it creates a cluster. And then with the cluster, then it goes to the police, and then it increases the chances of it going to trial. And then also it includes historical cases too. So yeah, that's the third thing in regards to charitable work.
Amazing. And what advice would you give to anyone that's gone through? Because I'm sure you get a lot of messages on your social media. And what kind of advice would you give anyone that's gone through this? Any sort of abuse, and sexual abuse especially, because that's the...
Yeah, I think that's the number one advice is to break the silence to yourself first in as many different ways as possible. It could be writing a poem, it could be choreographing a dance piece, it could be painting, there's literally numerous amount of ways. And then break your silence to then somebody on step number 17, step number 21, whatever it is. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to focus more on becoming the most powerful version of yourself and visualizing the life that you want to live, as opposed to having your focus solely on healing wounds, right? And correcting or repairing your broken self, because you're not broken. None of us are. So that's my other thing. It's just more of a shift of perspective, a shift in how you want to see it. And healing will happen as a byproduct as you move forward. So that's also what I want to say to that. And just know that no matter what type of abuse you have been through, whether you perceive your story as humongous, whether you see your story as nothing, whether you see your story as nobody be able to relate to it, whatever it is, we will be able to relate to it. I've got a Facebook group called the Power Tribe. It's 1,500 people in there. All are survivors of abuse. People share their stories, a private group. Nobody outside can see it, and nobody can share the content from within there. So that can be a space for you to share your story and get support that you need.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the book. And yes, very powerful stuff. And
thanks for getting it. Thanks for reading it.
Other stories as well. It's like when you hear people share these stories, do you still get triggered by it? Like, do you feel like that sort of anger? Like, why is this happening to people? Like, do you get that? Or
I get this question, and it's like, I'm only going to put it down to lucky. I feel like I'm lucky in this way because if I feel like that if these stories would impact me in a way where it messes me up, or I'm like, why is this world so doom and gloom? I think that is a path where that will just grow and grow with the amount of stories that I read, and it would end up getting to a point where like I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
Okay. But I'm lucky where, for the most part, the stories that I read don't affect me. Okay. In a way, they affect me in a negative way. They affect me in a way positively, where I'm like, okay, how can I support you? Okay, let's put you in a group. I'm like, you know, let's solve some type of problem here. Okay, your story is, Jesus, that's horrific. But rather than being like, you know, getting all messed up about it, I'm like, okay, what help do you need? How can I support you? You know, and I'm like that all the time. And that for me, I think it's just, I don't know, it's not like I learned it from somewhere, it's just how I am. And that's why I'm saying I'm lucky, because I could have been a different way. And I've been on this journey now since 2018. So that's 4 years now, nearly 5 years. And I would have burned out already if it was the other
way around.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, you seem to be one that you just want to get things done instead of dwelling on the event.
Yeah,
like everything you've done so far, it seems like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it later.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of things on a to-do list. So there's cons to this, because you just want to do everything. Like the size of my to-do list is immense. And sometimes it beats me down because I feel like I'm doing nothing. Right.
Yeah.
But I've always been at least try to be an achiever. You know, like I don't know. My dad was a very hardworking man, but in regards to not entrepreneurial, in regards to like, he was a cleaner, and cleaning is a hard job. I don't care what anybody says. Cleaning is a hard job. Like, you sweat your ass off. Like, it's not an easy job. And he would clean like schools, and he would clean office buildings, and then he ran up the ranks and he became manager. Then he was a regional manager, and he would hire sites and cleaners and stuff like that. He was a hardworking man. So I think I definitely took that aspect from him being a hardworking man. But then I saw how hard he worked for the little pay that he got and for how he was treated. And I took that. I'm like, okay, let's merge these two together. How can I be my own boss? And how can I be a hard worker and try to get things done?
Effective.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah. Thank you. And my last question is, what's one thing you're proud of?
Oh God, it sounds like my girlfriend asking me this, because she asks me every single night, what are you proud of today? What's the positive things today? I'm like,
okay, let me change that one then.
No, I meant that in a good way though. I meant that in a good way, because somebody like me doesn't focus on the positives. I only focus on what I haven't done yet.
So what you're proud of?
I'm proud of, you know what? I am proud of my book. I'm proud of doing that. I'm proud of the Power Tribe. I'm really proud of it. You know, when I first started it, I was like, you know, let me just open a group. I've done so many groups before. I really fought back on the idea of starting another Facebook group, because to me it's like, oh, just another Facebook group that I'm probably going to cancel in 6 months because nothing's happening with it. And I started it, and it's just I couldn't even put it into words how much people, like somebody posted in there the other day saying, if I didn't have this group over the last year from going through court trials of abuse within the family, I don't know if I would still be here. And I'm like, Jesus. I was like, okay, like this group I'm very proud of this group. So that's probably some of the biggest things that I'm proud of.
And it is male and female in that group. It's not just yeah. Sweet. And what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Jeez.
Hardest question I've asked you the whole day.
It is. I think it's because it's like, okay, right. So I'd say a couple of things. I'm very happy when I'm with my girlfriend. I'm very happy when I'm with her. So I'd love for that to happen more. We don't live together, but I'm very happy when I'm with her. I'm very happy when I'm at the gym. It grounds me. And I'm very happy when I help someone, because it makes me feel like that I'm actually doing work. You know, sometimes we don't, you know, I made sure that I mastered delayed gratification years ago. I was like, because if I need instant gratification, I'm going down a very dark path here, right? So I need to be very, very happy with delayed gratification. Otherwise, for example, I'm never going to make it as an actor. That's why lots of people give up their career, because they haven't made it in 10 years. And like, am I ever going to make it? I'm like, listen, you'll make it as an actor, which is one of the hardest professions in the entire world, right? You'll make it as an actor as long as you don't quit or you don't die. You will make it. You will find a way, right? It's simple. So it's like, I was on a train of thought there. What was the question? Happy.
What makes you happy? Yeah.
There's many things that make me happy.
Yeah. Your girlfriend being in the gym and helping someone when you help someone.
That's it. Delayed gratification. Because sometimes you don't always get instant feedback on like you're helping people, you're doing the right thing, you know? And I feel like even though I'm on this path of purpose, sometimes it is nice to have someone say, hey, Perry, just let you know that you are helping me. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So that makes me happy.
Yeah. Brilliant.
What makes you happy?
Brilliant. Just don't ask me my own questions, Mike.
I want to know. What actually makes you happy though? Just give me one thing.
Jesus Christ. Wait, I have to think now. Like, the work that I do, well, not my 9-to-5 job, but like doing this and talking to people.
Yeah.
I'm driven by the need to help people.
Good man.
And I think that's where most of my energy goes.
Yeah, no, you got beautiful energy about you.
And it's learning to kind of take a step back sometime, which I find a challenge because I always feel like I have to be doing something. But yeah, that's something I'm trying to address now at the moment. But yeah, that's where I get most of my happiness from. Because it doesn't require much energy because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what you just said there is like some people say, oh, Perry, be careful you don't get burnt out. I'm like, listen, I only believe you get burnt out when you're on a path that you're not aligned with.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's where, because you can, it's taking so much of your brain energy because you're doing something that doesn't agree with your body. So you
exactly.
Well, if something that's just like flows, then it just flows, that way. Yeah. Super.
Good man.
I write down so many questions and I end up asking like not even a quarter of it. I just like to be, I always think like, oh, what if I don't know what to ask? Then I just write down all the stuff. And then at the end, it's like, I didn't need to spend that much time on it.
Yeah. It's a form of resistance, I think, sometimes when you're writing down and it's the nerves. And as long as it makes you feel better as well, then that's what it matters.
Okay, we get going.
If you enjoyed today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a quick review on my Facebook page, Don't Be Afraid to Talk, or DM me on Instagram. The show notes will include all of the relevant links from today's episode. If you haven't already, please download, leave a rating, and share with your friends. You might just reach that person who needs to hear this message. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I am James Lumumba, signing off with gratitude.